And you and I have been going back and forth with ranking our top 5 quarterbacks throughout the P4 conferences. Today, we're on the ACC. Now, I know how you feel about your Florida State guy. I'm more of a Clemson guy, but we sat there and we went through it and we just ranked them out. So let's see our top 5 and let's go with it. Now, before we do all this now, Bud, you know we have to get into it and we have to talk about the reasons of picking these guys and our criteria. I'm going to start with mine. My criteria is a person that always elevates their team. What I mean by elevation, that means you are the reason why they're going to win. A win with quarterback and win because of quarterback. And I want to go with more because of your talent set. Now, I always want a quarterback that can play within the pocket and escape when needed with his feet, not a run-first guy. So let me hear your criteria on the reason why you picked your top 5.
So I think in the ACC you have a lot of guys with a fairly proven track record of playing at a high level. I mean, there's 7 or 8 dudes who have started quite a few ball games. So I did want, there's no real like freshman who I feel like this kid's a stud, 5-star coming out, got to elevate him early because this league doesn't recruit at a real high level. At least most of the teams don't. So you had a lot of guys with proven production. I did factor in upside, maybe guys I think could take a jump. Had to kind of measure, as we saw 5 there with Darian Mensah, how big of an adjustment is he going to have to the quality of play in the ACC compared to what he had in the AAC since he's coming over, from Tulane. But for me, it was like, what have you shown on the field? What do I think your upside is, and what I want you to quarterback my team? And of course, there's different fits for different schemes. But I think you have a lot of proven commodities in this league. Not sure how high end some of them are, but some of them I think do have some real upside.
Now I'm gonna hold you accountable to that. Now you said track record and ability on the football field. Now, when we looked at our list, top 5, we're pretty close.
Yeah.
Our top 2, we got Cade Klubnik and Carson Beck. Now, what separates those 2 guys, in your opinion, from the rest of the guys? And we'll get to those guys later on.
I think it's that Cade has, at least as far as we know, 2 healthy UCLs, and Carson Beck is coming back from Tommy John surgery.
Right.
So to me, like, I'm going to bet on the guy who had the much better season last year. And you could tell me, hey, Georgia's receiving core fell apart due to like all their guys getting arrested. And that's true. It did, right? And like the guys he was throwing to were not the guys that he anticipated throwing to, I think, if we had done this show last year about this time. But Cade had an awesome year. He really elevated. He also is a real threat with his legs. He was kind of a sneaky part of that Clemson run game. My friend David Hale from ESPN had this stat. He said 8 quarterbacks in the playoff era have had 4,100 yards and 43 touchdowns. Cade Klubnik is one. The others include 5 Heisman winners, 2 finalists, all taken within the first 10 picks of the NFL draft. Stats aren't everything, but he really did produce at a super high level last year in pretty much every game.
Now, when you start talking about stats aren't everything, stats mean a lot, but you really have to go in and study the stats. And when you go in and you study Cade Klubnik at our number 1 position, our quarterback ranking, you've seen growth from year 1 to year 2, and you've just seen a guy just come in and just kept getting better and better and better. Like, we've all just beat him up over the years of his inability to have good days and bad days. But he did throw for something crazy like 36 touchdowns last year, and I'm one of the guys that kind of predicted that he was going to be somewhere around there and closer in terms of breaking the record. But whenever Coach Sweeney has the continuity with the offensive line, the receivers, and the quarterback with Cade Klubnik, we understand there's reasons to feel real good about the real Death Valley, according to the people in South Carolina.
100%. I think Klubnik is the reason why, or one of the reasons why Clemson is the prohibitive favorite to win the ACC. On the flip side, we were comparing him to Carson Beck. I think Carson Beck, if healthy, has a ton of ability. He was a lot of people's top quarterback entering the season last year, and there's a reason Miami paid up for him, right? If he's back and healthy, I think he could be really good. But I think there are some questions about how good this Miami receiving core really is. Last year, Cam Ward played awesome, but he also was throwing to a lot of guys who are pretty darn talented, and almost all those guys are gone. Now, Miami did a great job going out to the transfer portal and getting some guys with some proven production, but I'm not sure that the guys Miami got in this year's portal are quite as good as the ones they had on last year's team. So we'll have to see just how well he plays down there in Miami. But I think almost all of the ACC teams, with the exception of one, would be really happy to have Carson back.
Listen, a lot of teams, Georgia might even be happy about it if we talk about the other conference. But you and I have sat down, we talked about it earlier today. Cade Klubnik, continuity receivers. breaking records. I've gone on the stance of saying I think that he gets close to 50 touchdowns this year. And you feel real comfortable about Clemson winning the ACC, getting the conversation of getting to the national championship. Now, with all that said, is he a true contender for the Heisman Trophy this year in New York?
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, people like stats. He's going to come into the season with a lot of hype. Voters also historically like really good records. I mean, Clemson's chances of winning 10, 11, 12 ball games in regular season plus a potential conference championship game are really good. So he's going to have the numbers. He's the face of the program. I do think he's got a really good shot. Perhaps the question is going to be like, will he have the marquee games down the stretch to have those real marquee moments? And Clemson's schedule this year is pretty favorable. I think he almost needs South Carolina to be good in order to and win that game. Obviously, he lost the game last year to have that kind of marquee moment to put him over the top. Almost all your Heisman winners end up having a Heisman moment, if you will. And just with how down the ACC is, I think, relative to some of the other leagues, I don't know that he's going to have a whole lot of chances to get that. So South Carolina at the end of the year will be pretty important.
Well, listen, you said it. Stats mean a ton, and I think they're great. And I think that's where he's going to separate himself with the stats and his ability with the receivers around him. We understand that when you get to New York, you have to have that Heisman moment. And if we're looking at Lenore Sellers in South Carolina, we know that's going to be a marquee matchup, rivalry, ability to play. Forget it, in this for the state. You're winning the state's trophy, but you're also showing America that you are one of those top quarterbacks that can go out there and they'll be getting close to that 50 touchdown mark, and they might be undefeated. So it'd be hard not to say that he's going to end up in New York.
I agree with you there. I mean, other marquee games potentially, obviously the opener against LSU. If he plays well in that, and I think that's probably pretty important. If he plays like he did last year against Georgia when they lost like 30-3 or whatever that was, it was a stomping. Then that's going to be hard to overcome potentially. At Georgia Tech could be a game that is nationally televised early in the season. Georgia Tech had a nice year last year. At UNC with the Belichick factor, even if Carolina isn't any good, there's potential that ESPN wants to prop that game up because of the Belichick factor. But after that, I mean, SMU, they're going to need to be fairly decent to get that game on national status. At Louisville late in the year certainly could be one. But yeah, I mean, this is it's a schedule tailor-made for some stats, Smoke, because a lot of these defenses are not it.
Now, listen, we played nice for too long. We got to take these gloves off. The difference between you and I is at the number 4 position. You have Kevin Jennings, and I have Miller Moss. Now, why do you have Kevin Jennings in the 4th position so high?
He led SMU to the playoff last year. I think that team was going nowhere fast when they had Preston Stone playing, right? You watch them. They come out of the gate against Nevada. They struggle. Didn't they lose at home to BYU, I think, because they wouldn't put Jennings in for the longest time. And we were sitting there on cover 3 and watch this week after week. I'm like, look, I understand that the deference and the respect being shown to Preston Stone because he did lead him to a pretty nice season in 2023, led them to the American Conference Championship. But 24 ain't 23, and Stone just didn't have it last year. He had not really recovered from the injury, I don't think, or at least didn't show that he was playing with confidence that he had pre-injury before he broke his leg in the game before that American Conference Championship game in 23. And I mean, Jennings torched Louisville. He was huge for them in so many games. And I wonder if we suffer from a little recency bias. Because, yeah, you know what? Penn State's defense was all over him, and they got overwhelmed, and they're not as good as Penn State was. But I think he's a really, really promising player who I know they liked a lot, and I do think it said something that they finally went to him and benched Preston Stone. So I like Kevin Jennings a lot. I don't really dislike Miller Moss. I think he's just fine.
Bud.
He got benched at USC. USC clearly,
you're trying to kill.
You don't leave USC for Louisville unless USC doesn't want you.
You're trying to kill my guy. I'm gonna have to push back on him.
I like him. He's fine.
You don't like him. That was kind of like a sneak little subtle jab, poking my side, hoping I don't feel it. But that's a really gutting knife wrench type to my stomach. But here's what I'm gonna say about your guy, Tyler Van Dyke. You remember that name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he did transfer to SMU. Rhett Lashley and Tyler Van Dyke in Miami put up crazy numbers, right? With those two, good things happen. And you don't go into the portal to go get your former guy that put up crazy numbers, that can play, like I said, criteria of a quarterback is playing from the pocket. And that's where I ding your guy, Kevin Jennings, a little. And that's where you saw when they played against Penn State made him a pass-first, never-run quarterback, and he struggled with it. But with that said, you try to diss my guy, Miller Moss. I'm going to go ahead and win it with it. Miller Moss, Louisville, number 4. Real simple for me. Veteran, operates with quickness, rhythm, precision, accuracy, timing, touch. I mean, he got ran out of there maybe because Lincoln Riley felt a little cold feet and didn't want to blame himself for the actions of his team. But when you cut the film on, Miller Moss was dangerous, man. And when you give Coach Brom a veteran quarterback, we've seen what he's done with Tyler Shaw, we saw that, into an NFL player, I think that Miller Moss is number 4. And at some point, I don't know if your guy Kevin Jennings is going to finish the entire season as the starting quarterback. Because earlier on, I was listening real carefully. You said they benched Preston Stone for Kevin Jennings. So we know that at any point they want to win games. And with the guy that can play the quarterback position from the pocket, that can throw the ball, that's what SMU likes to do. They don't like to run with the quarterback. They like to throw with the quarterback. I think your guy might not finish out the season taking snaps from the center.
That would be surprising to me. I kind of read the Van Dyke thing as, hey, man, like we know the college career didn't work out, right? Like you got hurt. You had a bad year at Miami the year before you went to Wisconsin. You haven't been a good quarterback in college football for really since, 2022? Like come here, learn the system, maybe like transition into a GA role, like not a guy that's going to play in the league, right? So, come learn our system, maybe go into coaching. That would be kind of shocking to me if Van Dyke beats out Kevin Jennings for this job. But I mean, he does have a lot of arm talent. I guess you can never say never, right? And like I thought it was just kind of a luxury for SMU to have a guy like Tyler Van Dyke there as a backup quarterback. I think a lot of teams would really like him as a backup if you have to put him in as a pinch. But he just never really seemed the same guy to me after the injuries that he suffered in 2022. On Miller Moss, like again, I don't hate Miller Moss. I think that kind of in that 3 to 8 range in this list are actually, I know this is not great for like arguing on the show, but man, like 3 to 8 to me is very similar. You could kind of just randomize this stuff up like, yeah, okay, I could see it. I think there's kind of a drop off after 8, to be honest, and there's a lot of uncertainty in the bottom half of this league. But Miller Moss, man, he had a lot of games. It was like, ugh, okay, he killed Rutgers, okay. He played well against Maryland, Wisconsin team that didn't make a bowl game, right, and Utah State, but 5.5 yards an attempt against Michigan. Okay, they won that game, but not because of him. The Minnesota game, right, 5.3 yards per attempt, lost that one. Penn State, 6.5 per attempt, lost that one. Washington, 5.9. Again, another game under 6, well under 7, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. I kind of I like this guy if it's all schemed up for him and you got nice pieces around him and the competition stinks. So at Louisville, check, check, check. But I don't think he elevates that team. I don't think he's anywhere close to what Tyler Shuck was.
The conversation is not between Miller and Tyler. The conversation is how does Miller Moss in the top 5 quarterback ranking? That's a conversation. So let's stay and don't move the goalposts. Let's stay in it.
All right.
You said Penn State. Penn State defense was pretty good, right?
It is pretty good.
Washington's defense was pretty good. Now, Minnesota, they grind you out. And now when you talk about Michigan, Michigan's always played a good brand of defense. So you're talking about a guy that you say didn't really struggle. Like most quarterbacks, they have their issues, the ups and downs, but he's figured it out. The turnover to touchdown ratio wasn't that poor. And again, how many times are we going to say that Lincoln Riley did not do this guy justice by just giving him an opportunity to just figure it out? Like the talent is there. And when you give Coach Brom, again, I'm going to tell you, you're not listening. You're just kind of hearing me. A veteran quarterback at Louisville, we understand what can happen. And you said right scheme, check. Quarterback whisperer, check. Pieces around him, check. Running game, check. But listen, with all that said, got to move this on. We're going to talk about the quarterback that you and I believe that could actually get up into that top 5. That's not in our top 5 right now.
All right, so we can move it on. I do think that all the I like the situation Moss is in.
Mm-hmm.
I think he will play well for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a whole lot of guys who will play, who could play just about as well for Louisville as Miller Moss. Like, I don't think he's a draft. Like, I don't think he's like a guy's going to get drafted. I don't think he's a special player.
We can take a bet on that. We can take a bet on the draft thing because we.
All right, cool. How much?
Well, we'll talk about that off camera.
All right, well, commercial break. We'll do that. All right. Who do you have as a guy who could emerge and kind of get up into this list who you didn't have on your list?
You know what? I'm gonna go with Eli Holston out there at Pitt. I think that before injury last year, he's playing a pretty good brand of football. Transfer from Alabama, the skill set that you want and ability to process, throw with anticipation, timing, accuracy, has enough mobility and ability to escape within the pocket and just find little subtle movements to extend plays. I think you give this guy another year under his belt, healthy, comes back and plays good football. I think he's a guy that can play himself in that top 5.
I think that's a really, really good pick. There's a couple guys I considered here. So Steve Angeli played, I would say, fine, admirably, I guess, for Notre Dame in that bowl game, and also in the playoff game where he had to come in. He completed some passes. He wasn't amazing, but Kyle McCord was not amazing for Ohio State before he went to Syracuse. So Steve Angeli is a guy I think maybe could elevate into that role. There's actually quite a few. I agree. Holstein is a dude who jumped out last year initially with big numbers. I was kind of skeptical. I was like, oh, man, I don't know. He's getting away with a lot of passes that should be picked, but just weren't picked so far. And then that kind of all kind of came home to roost, so to speak. So I think he's probably a pretty nice fit there. I don't think Gio Lopez at Carolina, but it wouldn't totally shock me. He did play well for South Alabama when he was healthy. Again, speaking of health, Kyron Drones at Virginia Tech. I know they shut him down for spring due to the arm injury, but if he's fully healthy, he has the build. Now he's got to do a lot of things better, clearly. But you're seeing on the screen here, he really can scoot. They're going to run the Philip Montgomery offense this year in Blacksburg, so we've seen that quite a while at Baylor and at Tulsa and at some other stops. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but we do know they want to use some quarterback mobility, run some quarterback bash concepts there, and maybe they feel a little bit better this year about the receivers staying healthy in Blacksburg. So there are certainly some options who could elevate into that top 5. I don't think those spots 3 through 8 are safe at all. I think 1, 2, as long as Beck is healthy, to me, are fairly well locked in.